Terrifier 2 will have its theatrical re-release on November 1st, and so I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to review the movie. Damien Leone returns as the writer and director of the sequel, with David Howard Thornton reprising his role as Art the Clown, who, yes, goes on another sadistic killing spree. Only this time he faces off against a formidable foe, Sienna, played by LaVera. Terrifier 2 clocks at 2+ hours, which is crazy for a slasher movie of this kind, and is that extended runtime justified? Well, I think on the level of the ambitious scope of this movie and how it's trying to create more of a mythos for Art the Clown's character and the world he inhabits, and also create a more investing story through the character of the protagonist, Sienna. I think you do need that extra time to flesh all that out and make it investing for the audience. Do you need 2+ hours to do it? Probably not. But I think on a different level, this movie, just like the first one, is all about excess. It's an exploitation movie that revels in its excess and revels in the amoral, excessive violence, and also wants to just like flaunt it in the audience's faces, kind of mirroring the way Art the Clown mocks his victims and laughs at them. I think the movie itself is kind of like laughing at us, the audience, and our kind of voyeuristic consumption of these kinds of like grotesquely violent slasher movies. I think a movie like this, which is all about excess, I can't really judge it for that excess. And even on the level of the excessive runtime, I think that's all in keeping with this movie's like boundary pushing vision. And it doesn't censor itself, and it doesn't care whether or not it's going to offend or shock you. You can criticize the excessive violence of the movie, and sure, it is excessive and it is very, very disturbing. But I do have respect for kind of the rule breaking nature of a movie like this and how it kind of, you know, has that kind of creative indie, spirit behind it, where you have an independent filmmaker putting forth this vision and not playing by the typical rules. And I think that's very, very inspiring. And on the level of the shocking, grisly violence, rivals the first movie. I think the hacksaw scene in the first film is still like the hardest scene for me to watch. But in the Terrifier 2, there is featured a 3-minute mutilation scene, which is very tough to watch, very shocking and disgusting, and also just an incredible special effects feat. And the special effects and the gore effects and prosthetics here are absolutely hands down awesome. And just the practical effects and just the level of attention to detail here, and it just makes them come alive and makes them more disturbing. And it gets tough to watch, honestly. Even me, who's a seasoned horror fan, pretty jaded at this point. I've seen so many horror films, but still, I was like getting nauseous in certain scenes of this movie. I was like, ugh, I can't. Not sure how much longer I can like watch this. The first movie is just straight up slasher, and you know that all the characters in the first movie, ultimately the film is just going to treat them as victims, as just like meat for Art the Clown to kill. And so they're not overly fleshed out or developed at all. They're just there to like die. It's not the case here. When Sienna, her character, is introduced, there is more of a note of hope for the characters that they're not all going to be victims. Ultimately, for me, I found it more of a fun watch than the first movie. And I think the reason for that is that rather than just being like a downright slasher movie, on the level of the story, you have Sienna, who at one point, as you saw in the trailer, she on Halloween night dresses as this angel warrior with wings and ultimately goes toe to toe with Art the Clown. In writing it, I read that Damien Leone wanted her to be kind of like a Batman figure to Art the Clown's Joker. and have that kind of dynamic and comic book dynamic and relationship. And I think that's what made it fun, because it's leading into a little bit more of like a comic book narrative where you can break the rules a little more, and you can have extraordinary, kind of miraculous almost plot contrivances that you would find in like a comic book story, introducing more of an element of the extraordinary and the supernatural at times. I think Terrifier 2 is one of the best Halloween themed movies in recent memory for me. It's just perfect. It has all of the right elements that you want in a Halloween movie. It's grotesque, it's disturbing, it's offensive, but it's also incredibly fun. And like I said, has this like comic book almost storytelling to it where miracles and extraordinary supernatural stuff happens, and anything's like possible. There are no rules, and you can roll your eyes at times, like, and it can it defies credibility, but I think it's framed the story in a way that makes you like buy into that okay, this is just in the spirit of a comic book story, or it's in the spirit of like an 80s cartoon almost, where you can have these like plot contrivances and you can just like, okay, I'm not going to nitpick at this, and just realize that these are elements introduced into the film for the fun factor, and it's all serving kind of like the fun factor. It wasn't holding back on the slasher element too. It's still a full-on like slasher movie at times. And I think you can distinguish Art the Clown from other traditional slashers, particularly in the way Art the Clown doesn't just kill his victims. He interacts with the organs and severed limbs and body parts, and spends a lot of time like mutilating the bodies. And he doesn't just like kill a victim and move on to the next one like Jason or Michael Myers. Sure, you have previous slashers like Freddy Krueger who play around and mock their victims and have that sadistic kind of fun streak to them. And I think you have a little bit more of that element in Art the Clown. But I think Art the Clown goes even further in the way he mocks his victims, as I was saying. And I think he's just not laughing at the victims. I think on another level, he's laughing at us, the audience, and our voyeuristic consumption of watching a character like him do the things he does and do the horrible things he does. And he's just like kind of mocking us too, saying, hey, we're getting off on this. And I think that also distinguishes him as a slasher. There's a meta element to Art the Clown. There's a that is brought out in his theatricality of being this clown, this mime. And so I think he's making like spectacle and how we watch spectacle into kind of an implicit like aspect of the whole like slasher viewing experience. He is a very unique character in that respect. I don't think you get that often with other iconic slashers, and it's filmed in a way to kind of emulate the kind of like grainy kind of cinematic quality that you would find in like an 80s slasher movie. And I like that kind of recreation of that film grain just on the screen and the filter. It has that note of nostalgia to it. It doesn't rely on that, but it has those little nostalgic sentiments to it that are callbacks to those 80s slasher movies. All right, on that note, let me know if you've seen Terrifier 2. Did you enjoy it? Are you planning to see it again in theaters? And if you liked this video, yeah, please like and subscribe, support the channel, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.